I think that that sentiment of having decentralized money, or not necessarily, decentralized money, but working in this decentralized environment and in crypto, I'm doing it personally because I'm not a fan of, I don't want to get too much into detail of it, but I'm not a fan of my government. I'm not a fan of the way they run things. Once you've seen the light to how Dows can, disperse governance and disperse democracy, it's kind of like opens your eyes to it all. And I'm like, how is society still operating as we are when we've got this fantastic opportunity in front of us? And
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Vertical Blocks, where today we are pleased to be joined by Guy from OpenOcean, as well as Andre Cronje and Sam Harcourt from the Fantom Foundation. You've got myself, Juan Angel, on here as well, your usual host. I'm really excited for this conversation today. So just to get it started, Guy, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on over at OpenOcean.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me here today. So yeah, let's rewind back to 2018. I come from primarily a broadcasting background. I used to work in broadcasting up in the city, and a few friends of mine sort of sweet-pilled me into crypto when that was all in the narrative in 2018. So I just get involved with a few projects on the community level, and that involves administering, being an administrator for a few rooms. And this sort of like ends up snowballing to the point where I'm managing 4 or 5 different community chat rooms. And then, roll on the end of 2020, I join up as an ambassador for one of the major projects. It's top 20 projects. And then by the end of that year, I'm launching my own NFT project in collaboration with a few friends. And thankfully, at the time, we made the largest single donation to charity from an NFT project. So sort of fast forward to 2022 at the start of the summer, after, the terror crash has happened. I get a friend of mine who's working for OpenOcean, and he was leaving his position, and they were looking for someone to come in and sort of take on multiple different roles within the company. So it's wearing a community management hat, wearing a business development hat, and sort of overseeing like multiple different facets of the company. And so I joined, I think, at the start of the summer, mostly because I kind of, on a personal level, I share OpenOcean's vision and their goal, which is to be multi-chain, to provide for the community the best possible experience in crypto. And that is, easy access to swaps, no matter what chain you're on. And that also includes value as well. So bringing the best value possible to the end user. And so, yeah, OpenOcean, it's kind of like reminiscent of the name. At the moment, we're on 19 different chains. Fantom was one of the first chains that we launched on back in the day. It's one of our original collection. And it's one that we see, quite a lot of traffic on today. And especially it's one of the chains that, we're pushing for technical innovation on. So, we were one of the first aggregators to have limit orders open for the Fantom network, so you can set your prices and make sure that you're catching those dips, or selling when everything pumps. So yeah, I mean, as a platform, we're always like forward, we're always forward thinking, we're always looking forward to the future. And again, that is to see like the options that we can offer to the community. So yeah, OpenOcean is one of the widest reaching DEX aggregators. Don't like to say we're the largest, but we reach into all corners of crypto just to be able to provide that same good experience for everybody.
Yeah, thanks for the awesome intro. That gives us a good idea of the trajectory so far. I mean, I'd be curious to hear how the competition has sort of increased or changed from when you first launched to today, right? It's a very competitive space, the DEX aggregation space. And especially now, before we started recording, we were even talking about meta-DEX aggregators, which are aggregating the aggregators. So just curious, how you see this sort of shift changing the way that your particular vertical competes and how it serves the end user.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if we go back to like 2017, that's when that's when OpenOcean as a platform, that's when the idea was first conceived by our co-founders. And our founder noticed that there was a distinct problem in aggregating swaps, because you'd have isolated pools of liquidity dotted around, and they're going to provide inefficient means for people to swap. You might have super deep liquidity on exchange A, but exchange B has 20 different tokens, but essentially not that deep of liquidity in pools. And so when we're talking about competition and we're talking about other competitors in the space, let's we're not going to beat around the bush. The DEX aggregator space is very fierce, it's very competitive. We're all essentially pushing for the same goal, but that vision that we had back in 2017 hasn't changed, and that is again, to be able to offer everything that we can to our community to get those gas rates, get those slippage rates down, and basically just make sure that you're not getting a rough deal when you want to swap tokens online. And as you mentioned, the Meta Aggregator, I think that's been a really big boon for the space, especially since that one of the pillars that we sort of have to base OpenOcean on is education, because the amount of people who don't know that DEX aggregators are a thing. There's a lot of people who might not even, that know about all the DEXs. They just heard of Uniswap, and then they know that Binance and other exchanges exist, right? And so a part of that is education in the market. So once you tell people that DEX aggregators exist, they're like, oh, okay, I can plug in whatever I want, and I can find out where I'm going to get the best price on my swap. But then you enter the level of the Meta Aggregator that DeFi Llama has been working on. And it's an aggregator to aggregate all the aggregators. So you can plug in whatever trade, whatever swap that you want, and then all of our competition are basically going to offer us quotes. And then you can just browse amongst those and basically see which platform that you want to go and trade on. And so I think the introduction of a tool such as the Meta Aggregator, and especially due to DeFi Llama and the outreach that they have as well, it's really, really good for lots of different platforms, especially I'd say smaller aggregators whose like route optimization is actually pretty competitive. So we've seen a huge uptick in traffic on OpenOcean thanks to the Meta Aggregator from DeFi Llama, and that's mainly because of our routing algorithm, which is unique to the platform. And what that will do is, we can go into more detail about it, but that will break down a trade into, say, 2, 3, 4, several smaller trades. If the algorithm deems that overall the slippage and the gas costs are going to be more efficient than trying to push that trade through, like say a $10,000 trade, rather than trying to push that through, we might break it down into 3 smaller trades and route through multiple DEXs. And it's so good that on a chain like Fantom, we have so many liquidity sources aggregated. So when someone wants to go and make a swap, we're kind of, quietly confident that we can always offer that better rate. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of competition in the space, and it's very hard to stay ahead. And we think that sort of one of the ways to do that is through like a very strong community incentives. And that's things like competitions, keeping the community engaged, and actively listening to feedback. And that's something that we stay on top of. And we've got a full team who are sort of currently monitoring trends and sort of positioning OpenOcean to be in the best place available to sort of take charge of those trends. So yeah, we're really excited about the Meta Aggregator. It's really great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Andre, please, I was going to say, I think you know a thing or two about DeFi, so I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Yeah.
Don't do that. I was actually curious, since DeFi Llama's Meta Aggregator, have you guys been seeing larger size swaps, or have you been seeing more small scale swaps?
Both across the board. So I mean, our daily active user count, that is users who come to either our site or Llama and make a swap, that has increased something like 35%. So I mean, we're seeing people repeatedly using the platform, but that's also a mixture of larger and smaller trades. Primarily, I think it's been a series of smaller trades because of the way that we can even with small trades, the way that we can break those down and funnel it through 6 or 7 different channels, ultimately can lead to a really good experience. I mean, I think the largest, off the top of my head, I think the largest single trade that we've seen through the DeFi Llama platform was, I think it was just over $1 million in one trade, and that was pretty impressive. I actually saw them post this morning that they had a $50 million transaction posted through. NGMI posted this morning on Twitter, so I was like, they're doing something right.
I guess Justin needed some new USDT, so you probably just made a swap. Every time it's that size, it's always one guy. It's just that simplistic. One thing that I always thought would be a holy grail, because this is something I needed a lot in a lot of the apps we built, was an on-chain DEX aggregator. How much of your stuff is happening off-chain versus how much is happening on-chain?
I think quite a lot of our sort of pricing and quoting is all happening on chain and in real time. It's really fantastic to see, because I mean, we've had to work quite hard on the back end to update our quoting mechanism. So we're having a few issues with that recently, but now, I mean, I think we're at a point where we can consider, we consider OpenOcean a viable competitor to our other main competitors, and that's where the point that we've sort of ramped up our market presence. We've ramped up our community presence as well. So yeah, I mean, we're always looking for ways that we can move the goalposts with OpenOcean. I know recently we introduced our cross-chain swaps, which absolutely fantastic. So you can bridge and swap, on-chain in real time, and you get live quoted for that as it's happening. So those quotes are always changing. So yeah, you always get a nice variable outlook on what you're going to do, like whether it's a swap or whether it's a bridge.
And with kind of all these capabilities you're giving to the user, and to loop back to the limit orders that you guys have, I know that's quite impressive for a DEX, right? Are there any other sorts of order types that you're looking to implement, whether it's an iceberg order or even like a stop loss order, or like a trailing stop?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had a lot of requests for stop loss orders, and that's something that we're actually working on implementing at the moment. As far as order types go, that's, I think at the moment we're focused on, on normal order type, our limit orders, and we're looking at introducing stop loss. But with just touching on the limit orders again, one thing that really helps us enable to fulfill those limit orders is the hybrid purchasing model. So, once you make a limit order, we put that order out to tender via RFQ, which is, request for quote. And so we can get people bidding on that swap in real time as it happens. But then we also, if we determine at the point where the Oracle price is hit, it's more efficient to route it through our normal AMM model, then we'll do that instead. So our algorithm is constantly adjusting and looking for the best possible route with the lowest gas and ultimately the lowest slippage.
Guy, so one question I had is, earlier on you were talking about building a strong community, educational content, all that sort of stuff. It's the feeling I get is that as more things become abstracted at the user interface level, and for example, OpenOcean's routing mechanism gets sort of grouped into everything that DeFi Llama is doing through its own meta-DEX aggregator. How does that relationship continue to grow and expand, right? If you no longer have users necessarily directly coming to your homepage, using your user interface, interacting with you in the same way, and we have this sort of bundling of all these different communities under one interface that aggregates them at a meta level, how does that change the dynamics of creating a community and having that stickiness that users will continue to use your product, when what we're seeing is almost a race of efficiency, right? Of who can produce the best quotes in the fastest way and deliver those to the end user.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm gonna use an analogy here. Like in the UK where I come from, say I want to go out and buy some car insurance, right? I'm gonna go on a price comparison website and I'm gonna type in all my information and I'm gonna go see out of which of the competitors that I'm gonna go use, right? I have no affiliation to whoever I'm searching. I'm just going to go with the cheapest price. So when we look at that compared to crypto in the sense of the meta aggregator, right? Our job is to be able to hook that person when they see OpenOcean on the meta aggregator. But I mean, it goes way beyond there. So our main focus really has to be in creating a sustainable community. And to do that, we're sort of pivoting OpenOcean into being an all-inclusive hub, right? So we're turning it into a crypto hub rather than just a website that you might go on when you need to swap some stable coin or you want to catch the dip. We're trying to turn it into this catch-all place. And to do that, we have to be on top and we have to constantly release new features. So yeah, you can go on OpenOcean and you can just swap tokens, but you can also use our perpetual futures that we've just launched, and our cross-chain swaps. We launched a DAO recently just before Christmas, and so it's sort of our idea that if you try and include as many aspects of possible to loop the community in and be a part of the project, that's about building that returning user base. But I mean, also in terms of keeping OpenOcean afloat, growing the project, and taking us to where we need to be. We have so many integrations on the back end where people have no idea that they're actually using our algorithm and they're using our swapping mechanism because they've just gone to a website, interacted with a widget, got some native platform tokens from another project, except we've fulfilled that on the back end. So it's kind of like a two-pronged approach. We want to make sure that we're sustainable in terms of our deployments to other projects. And also we want to make sure that we have the community and the sort of the knowledge and the drive forward and the awareness in the space in order to be able to continue to pull people onto the OpenOcean website. Because yeah, it's great that we've seen so much traffic from DeFi Llama. And I think the relationship is sort of symbiotic in a way. We're currently talking with them about working on some community aspects that we can do to raise awareness. And ultimately, I keep saying this every single time. This space is all about education. It's all about knowledge. And I think anything that we can do, whether that's pumping out community articles that tell you about how futures work or the different types of stablecoin, those are all angles that we're tackling. We haven't got the largest team in the world, but we think we punch quite above our weight in terms of the size and what we can offer. So yeah, it's kind of tough, really. It's about keeping that community involved and coming back. But if you haven't, at the end of the day, if you haven't got a good product, people aren't going to come back and use the site. And so the fact that a lot of projects, a lot of platforms are still here, still building in the bear, and sort of positioning ourselves for whenever this winter might end, whether that's this year, next year or the year after. It's those ones who are still around and sort of still active that are really going to be on top with sort of when that ball momentum returns.
Nice. I really like what you guys are doing. I mean, at the end of the day, crypto as a whole, there's always this massive pull back to centralized exchanges. A massive event happens, Mt. Gox, everyone freaks out. They're like, oh yeah, you must have your own wallet. And then over time, everyone slowly gravitates, and there's more and more volume goes back towards the SEXs. But what you guys are offering is such a good experience, and it seems like I've used you guys before, and it is quite seamless. And I think you guys are enabling that kind of momentum to stay off chain and to stop people always gravitating back to the centralized solutions. And I think definitely once you get those other orders in, there's going to be so much tooling and all that information you're going to provide. It's pretty cool. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of anyone who's in DeFi, part of your fundamental drive should be to encourage people to get their coins off exchanges. That, I mean, if there's one thing that we've seen off the last year is that, how do we know we can trust them? How do we know we can trust with these centralized entities? And the thing is, unless we can see verifiable data that's and we know exactly what they're doing with reserves and stuff like that, Yeah, personally, I don't keep anything on centralized exchanges. I try and avoid them at all costs. And that's, again, part of our narrative going forward, is to push that envelope of decentralization. And yeah, I mean, if, anything we've seen from this year, I'm hoping that we don't have any more situations like that. I mean, I think everyone got pretty riled up, was it 2 days ago, with the Fed going to announce their international crackdown, and then it was some Blitz Lato.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it was all the stuff that like, we didn't even know that exchange existed. But it just goes to show that it's not isolated to the top huge exchanges. There's stuff going on everywhere. And I think with DEXs, with DEX aggregators, being able to see all the information, the liquidity in pools and the depth that you can make in the transactions, and be able to see that data like live in front of you, and not have it masked behind some wall. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of centralized exchanges, maybe there's a couple exceptions, are there to make money. Yeah, they're there for their investors and they're there for the board. Maybe not necessarily at a focus of pushing the envelope of crypto. Some of them are. And I think, again, it's just something that we need to keep in mind, is that a lot of platforms, a lot of projects, decentralized projects, are here to push what we can do for our communities forward. And OpenOcean is one of those. So we have a little news sharing group. Anytime I post anything about centralized exchanges, I just get some down thumbs and stuff. But I'm like, it's all news. We got to stay on top of it. So.
To friendly like push back on one of those points, I'd say even in the DeFi world, I mean, everyone's out to make money.
That is true. That's true. Yeah. It is a very lucrative space. So there's lots of positions to make it if you want. But I mean, I think that that sentiment of having decentralized money, or not necessarily decentralized money, but working in this decentralized environment and in crypto, I'm doing it personally because I'm not a fan of, I don't want to get too much into detail, but I'm not a fan of my government. I'm not a fan of the way they run things. Once you've seen the light to how Dows can, disperse governance and disperse democracy, it's kind of like opens your eyes to it all. And I'm like, how is society still operating as we are when we've got this fantastic opportunity in front of us? And I'm guessing that, with the hacks and exploits and stuff, it doesn't give it a good name. But we got to remind ourselves that there's those people in the spaces who are constantly trying to develop and make it a better, all-inclusive place.
I do want to go into this aspect of the DAO. What does it mean to operate as a DAO? What does it mean to work in this environment, and how can you do so efficiently? But before we do that, I just want to take like a moment to self-reflect and kind of ask ourselves on the Fantom side. This is a question more for Andre and Sam. Going back to this topic of, as a technology becomes more efficient and becomes embedded in the day-to-day of people's workflows without necessarily being in their face, right? Like the more efficient it is, the more abstracted it becomes, obviously depending on where in the tech stack it sits. How do you see this paradox kind of playing out of building a strong brand and having a strong presence as a technology, as a blockchain company, while also working towards abstracting ourselves so much that we operate smoothly and invisibly under the surface, right? How do you guys see this pivot kind of taking place, or where do you agree or disagree with that statement?
I personally think some of the biggest companies in this world are companies that no one knows the names of. It's the stuff that provides the infrastructure, the piping, the underlying systems. Where to use a very simplistic example, most of us are in finance, so we know when you'll talk about something like BlackRock. If you're not in finance, you've never heard about BlackRock, but they're probably one of the biggest companies in the world. But that's because they are that underlying financial infrastructure. Something like Cisco, like anyone that does anything on the internet, somewhere it touches a Cisco device. But a lot of people who work on the internet won't know about Cisco. So our job, now I'm speaking as Foundation, which is, I think, different for someone than OpenOcean, is not to be known. then we're doing our job successfully, because we're not user facing. Our job is to make the lives of people that build user facing on top of us easier. So, anyone that has developed a GGSN or a ISN or some kind of big switch, they've probably spoken to Cisco, because they build the tools that need to leverage what they have. But as a user, you don't necessarily interact that way. That was a weird plug. I don't see what that has to do with anything. I want to go back to Dows. I have a very anti-opinion on Dows. I have now. So my first question is, how much have you guys done with Dows so far? Like have you had any real contentious votes? Have you had any decisions left to the community that could materially impact the protocol? Like, or you mentioned it recently launched, so I'm assuming.
Yeah, so it was we sort of launched, I think it was at the end of November, start of December.
Okay.
And we'd already had the infrastructure in place. So that is our voting on Snapshot and our voting on Discord. We already had that in place before we launched, and we wanted to sort of get an idea of what that would look like. But yeah, I mean, so DAOs are great, right? But we have to take a step back and look at, someone, because of the guidelines that we introduce, someone could potentially, instigate, let's say, a proposal that could negatively affect the platform or negatively affect, let's say, someone wants to introduce some kind of crazy tokenomics update, which is going to see a lot of communities' bags necessarily get adversely affected, or something like this. It's very hard to kind of, with the whole decentralized governance in mind, it's very hard to have to step in and be like, no, you can't do that, because that's going to negatively affect the platform. It goes against the whole entire process of the DAO. We're still small in terms of the amount of proposals that we've had filtered through. But our community is actually quite strict in terms of what they're voting on. We've only actually had 2 proposals make it through to the formalized voting stage, and only one of those has actually gone live, and that was the launch of our Perpetual Futures platform. So it was brought up. The idea was created by one of our users. In order to take place in the DAO, you have to stake quite a significant amount of our OOE tokens, in the DAO, and lock them up for a period in order to be able to create these proposals. But yeah, it's that double-edged sword between, wanting the community to come up with new ideas for the platform or new areas that we might be able to launch in, or necessarily new partners, but also retain that brand image and make sure that we're not going against what OpenOcean is for, which is providing that same reliability and that same experience to the end user. So yeah, it's very difficult. So I mean, we first off, so if anyone wants to make a proposal, we start off on Discord, and you have to get a certain amount of reactions and interactivity with the post. So it's basically like an open discussion. It's an open table discussion. And then once it's past that stage, it then moves across to the snapshot voting, which is where your weighted OOE voting comes in. So then you can go on there and vote for the proposal, and then we can essentially push that through. So yes, it's still the DAO on our side is still in its early stages. But I mean, even today, we've got, I think, from the start of January, we had about 15.4 million OOE tokens locked up, and then I checked it this morning in the weekly info blast, and I think we're up to about 22 million now. And our idea is to keep locking up those tokens and to incentivize governance on our platform. But again, like OpenOcean is, we're very multicultural. We've got users from all around the world. So the ideas that are coming forward and things like that, they're really good because we're not just only targeting Western users, or we're not only targeting Eastern users. We've got a sort of mixed gamut of everybody there. But yeah, it's challenging. It really is, especially when someone could create a completely harebrained idea that's not good, and it gets all the votes and goes through. But so you have to have that sort of those breaks in place to stop that. But again, it's like, is that real democracy? Is that what the spirit of the DAO is for? So yeah, it's very promising. It's something that, you know, we're continually trying to educate our users on, and that is, you know, we give guidelines on how to make proposals. You know, we give advice on you know, potential areas of interest we're looking at. So if there's a partner that they want to work with, or even if there's a competition that they want to run within the community, that is all accessible through the DAO. So yeah, we're very encouraging to get people to use it, but it's hard. It's hard to know where those boundaries are. You know, when you have to step in to control brand and control image.
Yeah, I mean, look, corporate governance has been experimenting with this stuff for literally decades at this point, and I tend to believe it's kind of been perfected at this point. So, you know, not all of your shareholders have a vote. They can do proxy votes until there's enough, so that and then their right is really only to appoint a director, and the board of directors' rights is really only to appoint an executive team and to execute on that. So anyway, the reason I mention that is because I think what you said is very accurate, that you have to provide some of those guidelines, you have to provide some of those checks and balances, and I believe you have to provide those sort of breakers to be able to stop any potential process flow. Because every time I've seen truly decentralized DAOs, they've always ended up in failure. It's only the ones that are kind of in a mix of the tween, where anyone can suggest, but everyone's suggestion is not necessarily equal in weight. And I think that's also a very important distinction, because otherwise you quickly get so much noise. But yeah, also I'm curious to see what happens with DAOs going forward. There's a lot of interesting precedents being set in the US right now towards DAOs just being a joint venture. So if you are in control of any of those stopgaps, just, you know, avoid it.
Yeah, that's and again, it's one of these things that we constantly need to look at and adapt and see how we can do it in the future. Like personally, I'm a big fan of you know, using NFTs to do DAO governance as well, rather than like token weighting as well, because that's a really, you know, NFTs is a whole separate thing, because I have a sort of semi NFT background that I'm kind of big on. You know, it's one of those unlimited potential things that. But you know, you speak to the ordinary person about NFTs and they go, "Oh, it's just that stuff I heard on the news. Don't want anything to do with it." And it's kind of like anyone even to people in crypto, you start talking about NFTs, and it's either I always think it's either like a 50-50 at whether they completely hate the idea of them or they own like 20. So I usually find it's like either one or the other. But yeah, the whole DAO space is it's a tricky field to navigate, but you know, we're hoping that with enough time and enough, you know, community member effort and enough input from our team, we can really make it into something that is a net positive for the platform.
On a similar note, I mean, we have an exciting episode of Vertical Blocks coming up where we'll also be talking about DAOs from a legal perspective with somebody who's an expert in the space. But and you're actually gonna be on that one, Andre. So I like how you're nodding along. Yeah. But so from the perspective of just organizing a DAO and making it run more efficiently, assuming there is a model where that can work in a fully decentralized model. What are you guys' thoughts on the different governance mechanisms? Going back to the, you know, some people's vote should be weighed more heavily than others. What we've seen historically is where it's 100% dependent on token holder or the token amount that a specific holder has in a staking. And of course, that can have positive implications in terms of they have skin in the game, but oftentimes it can also lead to situations which are not to the advantage or to the well-being or positive outcome for the DAO as a whole. So I'm curious about what you guys think about some of these other governance mechanisms that are being experimented with today, and also from OpenOcean's perspective, you know, how you decide to go with a staking, you know, an initiative that's fully focused on the staking side of things.
Yeah, I mean, so from our perspective, we initially went with token weighting for the DAO governance, and I mean, again, you know, we need to bring in that subject of stopgaps, because if if somebody was to create a proposal that could negatively harm the platform, and then someone just went and scooped up as many of our tokens as possible and plowed that whole entire weighting into it, ideally, at the end of the day, the DAO ambassadors are in charge of what runs through. But that could literally be a process of talking to the community, educating them as to why this specific request or proposal could be negative for us, or couldn't work in the long term, and then just maybe approaching, I'm just talking at hypotheticals here, approaching whoever made the proposal and talking to them about other avenues we could take, or different ways in which to to look at what they're proposing. But I mean, at the moment, the way the DAO's working, we're actually considering sort of pivoting to the VE token model in terms of how we do DAO, how we operate the DAO. It's something we're considering at the moment. We haven't officially gone ahead with it, but I mean, as looking back at how Curve does the VE token model, it's something that we feel like that could be a net positive for the community. At the moment, we're quite thankful that we're in a position where we don't have massive bag holders, slamming the weights down on their votes on specific things. So it seems to be that we've curated a community who is sort of thoughtful of the platform and wants to see the community and the platform thrive. And I think part of that is our emphasis on like future profit sharing for our DAO members and for members of our community. And so it's sort of getting into that mindset of longevity and not just short term, I want to fill my pockets and get out of here quickly. And I think that during this extended bear, we have expelled a lot of those those people of that mindset from this industry. So, we'd like to think that those who are stuck around here, especially like individual community members, not even on institutional levels, want to see the platform succeed. And so, I think that with any future governance, yes, we will, look at it with a fine-tooth comb. And yeah, if it works for us in the long term, want to implement the new governance token model for that. But I mean, going back to what you said at the start in terms of like weighted voting, yes, there is potential for manipulation there, but at the moment we haven't seen that. So I think we're going to continue on with like how we've been operating it so far, but always mindful of different methods and ways that we could, carry on fulfilling our obligation to the DAO and the community.
Yeah, one of the models I found interesting, and I haven't gone into it too deeply, but is the idea of weighting based on digital reputation. So I know that, for example, the Gitcoin folks and all of them are really experimenting with these different ideas and these possibilities and these models of how can we start to rebalance it so that it's not necessarily just like, hey, you bought this token early on, so now you're a massive whale, but you have no idea what's going on in the space. You're not following it. You don't care. You're just a profiteer. And you're willing to sink the ship if that means that you'll get out with a bigger bag at the end of it. How can we sort of rebalance it so that maybe people who don't have that advantage, who weren't in early just because they got lucky and they rode a trend or a wave, how can they have a larger say or impact on the governance of an ecosystem without it necessarily being tied to their financial stake in the organism, right? Because there could be somebody that's actively contributing to the community, to the thought process, to the governance, who cares about the longevity and outcome because they're ideologically, philosophically, politically, whatever it is, aligned with the ecosystem. They just don't happen to have $10 million in the token because they didn't buy it, during its ICO days or whatever the hell it is. How can we give those people more of a share and weight it in their favor so that they, alongside the ones who have financial skin in the game, can steer us in the right direction? That's one of the things that I'm really interested in seeing develop, because I think the way we have it right now, where it's strictly dependent on just, how big is your bag and how long do you have it staked for, there's just so many things that can go wrong there. And I'm curious to see how it'll develop. But I guess more of a statement than a question, but if any of you have thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Well, I'll very, very briefly touch on that. We allow, so to vote on a proposal, you need to be staking a certain amount of OOE, but we allow anybody to make a proposal in the Discord. So that's like, we call it like a social or an organic proposal. So even if you hold $10 worth of the token or hold none at all, and you just, you're interested in seeing the platform progress and develop, you can go on there and make that proposal to the community and start that discussion. So we're trying to bring down that barrier of being able to interact with the DAO, but also, keeping in mind that token weighting for voting, for the long run.
Love it.
Cool.
So, I'm curious, given your past and your passions, are you trying to drive internally to have a NFT meta aggregator?
Funny you should say that. Yes, that is something that we're actually currently building out at this point. And we've got a few extra features that we're building into that other popular NFT meta aggregators haven't done. So we're really excited to be able to bring that to market. Initially, we were aiming for the end of 2022. It's looking like it's going to be more Q1 23, just because when we launch, we want to make sure that we have a lot of marketplaces already on board to go on and view a whole entire collection across multiple marketplaces, but also being able to buy the NFT with any currency that you want. So, whether that's in stable coin or you want to use your Bitcoin or whatever, you can view a whole entire collection. You can pay with whatever you want. So yeah, that's something we're building now, something we're really, really excited about launching in 23.
I mean, is there anything you can't aggregate? Have you looked at like visuals?
I was thinking, right, like someone might make a competition to DeFi Llama, right? So they might make another meta aggregator, and then I'm thinking, hold on, who's going to aggregate the meta aggregators? I'm like, are we just going to keep getting deeper and deeper here, and we've got a double meta aggregator? Like where does the line stop?
When you get better slippage than a centralized exchange, I'd say that's probably where you're going to get.
That's the crazy part, right? It's that with that tool, you actually realize how cheap swaps can be. Like, you don't need to go through centralized exchanges. Like, the value is there. You just got to reach out and take it. Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Andre.
No, I just wanted to comment, like you said, that's an education barrier, like most people just don't know. And like you rightfully say, that's 90% of the fight, is actually just informing people about the accessibility, less so than, like you say, it exists, it's available, it's there for anyone, but
not many people know. I mean, the amount of people who will just, I don't want to name specific platforms, the amount of people who just go to here and then only trade on that because that's what they know works on that chain. Let alone, because there's some projects who are trying to convince people outside of crypto to get into crypto. I don't think we got any chance with anyone who's not, already in that crypto mindset, already crypto orientated. They're going to use it on the back end, maybe if they use one of the wallets that we support for the in-wallet swap features. But our sort of main focus, our main role, is bringing people already in the crypto space into like the aggregator world. And yeah, education. I've said this like from the second I joined OpenOcean. I'm like, we need to like work on education, because beforehand, I only knew, the biggest one in this space. I only knew of them. I didn't know that any others existed. And so I've been working with the central team, to put OpenOcean on the map and to really try and drive the platform forward. And I think, with our uptick in daily active users across all socials, especially in the winter, we're trying to do that. But yeah, educate. I keep saying it all the time. I think only half the people are listening to me. And like, we need to be spreading knowledge on this constantly. Every AMA or every opportunity that I get, I come up and I say, education. I'm like, knowledge is king. I'm like, if we can provide people with that, whether or not you use our site or you use a competitor's site, you want to make sure that you're always getting the best possible deal. Don't get rinsed, and use these platforms that are going to give you those opportunities. So I've got passion.
I do think another part of that though is also sort of on the RPC side, private transactions or unsandwichable transactions or those things, because lately I've been seeing that becoming a big sort of problem, because I think a not a large but a sufficient active user base have become aware of aggregators and are using aggregators. But also in doing so, like you often see it's standard RPC transactions, and then they always get sandwiched, and it's
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
not that's not slippage, that's theft,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned. So I think that's also that's probably a next barrier you guys still have to fight or integrate, or
Yeah, it
but
is.
then you have to offer your own RPCs and all of those things.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, again, like, so we've just been actually talking with Llama Nodes, who's a new RPC provider, in order to be able to get as many of those connectors sort of working as we can. And then we built, actually recently we launched, which is like a very handy RPC tool. So when you go on and you make a swap, you can actively just pull up a menu and just pick which RPC points that you actually want to use.
That's
so you can
nice.
just toggle them on and off on the fly. And again, it's just one of those things, those extra little tools that we're trying to provide for people, along with, like, revoking permissions, that you can go on and you can just revoke permissions for all your wallets and stuff directly on the site. So yeah, we're constantly, looking at how we can make it the best experience. And that little RPC sort of, where you can turn them on and off, that's really popular, especially amongst our traders who use the platform to do a lot of arbitrage or, market, arbitrage or like market making and fulfillment between centralized exchanges and ours. We're one of the few platforms who actually have like Hummingbot integration, which is where you can use OpenOcean to arbitrage between centralized exchanges and DEX aggregators. So it's all about making those tools and putting them into our users' hands, but then also informing them how to make the most of them and how to use those tools.
How to get rich quick in 10 days.
Yeah, essentially. Well, if you know how to put a bot, make a bot, go for it.
It seems to me that, from the trend or the topic of this conversation, one thing that's becoming clear to me is that the way that digital communities around crypto, especially the early ones, organized, is about to be radically disrupted, in the sense that if you think about even DEXs, a lot of their usage came from people directly interacting with them on their discords and their communities, doing all this sort of stuff, essentially building a really sticky group of early adopters who were innovators, passionate about the future. But as time progresses and more of these things get abstracted and bundled up into first a DEX aggregator and then a meta aggregator of the DEX aggregators, the battle for users and transactions is going to shift in some sort of way. And these communities will have to think about how to reorganize themselves and provide the educational material and the content, because it'll no longer be enough to say, like, hey, we have a really strong community, so come swap on our UI, when you know that you could potentially be getting a better deal by going to an aggregator that abstracts all of these communities. And I have no idea, how that's going to look or how these communities are going to have to reorganize themselves, but it's pretty clear that, the battle is no longer getting somebody to your UI because they're active in your Discord. The battle is somewhere beyond that. So excited to see where you guys fit into that picture, right? And then where the aggregators that aggregate the aggregators fit into that as well. It's exciting stuff happening.
Yeah,
well,
again, sorry, Andre.
No, I just wanted to comment. I think one thing we do wrong in crypto a lot is applying the wrong nomenclature, because like I understand aggregator, the term, it is aggregating a bunch of options, but what it's actually is, right, it's trade abstraction. Like, it's adding a layer on top that makes it easier, so that now you don't have to go to Uniswap, SushiSwap, Curve, etc., and check each one and then decide on the rates. And by the time you figured out what the best one is, it's changed in any case, right? It abstracts that. Just like all good technology in the world kept being abstracted to the point where no one even noticed they were using it. And I mean, that has to be somewhere in the ultimate roadmap, right? Like, it has to get to that point of you guys also succeed when, specifically for the trade abstraction. Now, obviously, there's a bunch of other tools that are very user facing and user sensitive. And I think if you sort of look at this time scale and you stretch it out over a few years, then your users will be a lot more interactive with maybe the DAO or even the derivatives trading and stuff. But the trade abstraction, they wouldn't even notice. Like the thing you mentioned earlier, the NFT that you can buy with anything. I mean, that's again just the trade abstraction you put in front of it. Because even though it's USDC coming out here that does the swap, but it doesn't matter if it's BTC, ETH, whatever the hell comes in here. That's just your trade abstraction. And like the more tools like this you build that leverage it, the more value you add there. Anyway, sorry, that's just a small comment on the nomenclature. But aggregator, I think is a little bit of a misnomer.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And with anything with stuff recently, we've tried to pivot towards becoming that crypto hub. Because I mean, for us, I think the way we survive in the future is, if we're just resting on our laurels and saying, hey, we offer the best swap rates, and then we just do that for 4 years, eventually the users are going to decline, and it's one of those things you have to constantly stay on top of. And that's why we've tried to sort of begin this shift in moving us just away from just being able to offer swaps into more all-inclusive tools that people want to come back and use. So, sites like DeFi Llama, sites like Nansen that can offer, multiple different, like all these little tiny features that add together to build like the big picture. I think that's where we're sort of aiming for. And the fact that we've got this really good, our great in-house algorithm and the fantastic swap service, the fact that we've got sort of that as a platform to build on, we can always fall back on that's where we came from, that's our roots, but here's where we're going. So yeah, any platform I think that wants to make it and wants to survive needs to make sure that they're not only they're connected on the back end to as many services as possible, obviously depending on the type of project and depending on the type of platform, but also needs to have a clear, concise vision of what they see themselves doing in the future. So yeah, I mean, yeah, OpenOcean, we hope OpenOcean exists for years and years to come, but whatever version of the platform that looks like, we'll end up getting there, but it's going to take time. And at the moment, it's this slow pivot for us towards that all-inclusive, that all-in-one package that you can do together.
Well, you're definitely not resting on your laurels.
That's right.
I often think sometimes that we're not moving fast enough, but then I get reminded that our dev team can only work so hard. So it's a matter of keeping those communications open and trying to unify the whole entire team to have that concrete vision going forward. And so I hope, as a platform, and from my perspective as well, that we can keep operating and continue to offering people those little technological innovations in this space that just make their life a little bit easier. And it's something that we're always looking to do and looking to push out.
Guys, so as we start to wrap up this conversation here, where can people go to learn more about OpenOcean, tap into your educational initiatives and get involved?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously with any project, I would say make sure you're following us on socials. So we post regularly, twice daily on Twitter, as well as posts on CoinMarketCap, and that's where we publish articles as well. So definitely go and check that out. But in terms of using the platform, it's app.openocean.finance. If you head on our Twitter, there's a link tree that you can get through to all the links. And I would say that next time you maybe want to bridge some tokens to Fantom, or take some tokens from Fantom to another network, try out the cross-chain swap. You can plug in whatever you want to do there, and it'll it takes a few minutes, and it's really nice to just click once and it does it all for you. If you want to trade futures, we've got perpetual futures open as well. If you just want to have a chat about crypto, pop into the Discord. I'm there most of the day, as are the rest of the team. We're a very communicable community and a platform as well. So yeah, lots of opportunities to try out OpenOcean. And so we have almost all the major DEXs and liquidity sources on Fantom integrated as well. So make sure you go next time you want to do a swap on Fantom, head to OpenOcean, plug it in, and see what you get. Or DeFi Llama, and you can see that see us how we scope up against competition. So
test.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Guy. Thanks for coming on and sharing everything about OpenOcean. Thanks, Sam and Andre, as well, for contributing with your thoughts and opinions. Great to hear everyone's different perspectives. And yeah, for listeners or viewers of Vertical Blocks, stay tuned. Next episode, we're going to have an exciting guest who is an expert on everything legal surrounding Dows, as we were speaking about earlier. So that'll be an episode to keep your eye out for. Otherwise, let's wrap this up today. Thanks again, everyone, and make sure to like and subscribe to Vertical Blocks. We'll drop all the links in the comments below. Have a good one.
Good to meet you guys.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.